Thank you very much for inviting me to give this seminar to you. I met some of you at the researchers desk in Stockholm, which I now believe was last year, but not in 2018. A lot has happened since, as you know. And I was asked to come and talk to you about why it was important for us not only to focus on climate change, but to focus on the root cause of the environmental destruction that we are actually experiencing, and that is the economic system. So if we don't change the economy, I don't think we have any chance in tackling climate change or resource depletion or biodiversity loss or any of the other important crisis that we are actually seeing and which are being reported in more and more detail now. So I'm going to share my screen, and the first few slides will be a little bit about this driving engine, and then after that I will talk about new economic thinking. Now, I don't have all the answers, but there are many indicators as to what we need to do. So here we are. I'm going to share the screen and put this into full screen. Yeah. And then get rid of this. Okay, so we need to work together to build a new economy. And the reason why is that we could say that the Earth is shrinking because with population increase, we have less and less land and ocean to support our lives. That is to produce the food and commodities that we consume and take up our waste. So in 1900, when we were about 1.6 billion, we had almost 8 global hectares. That is hectares of land that support us and take up our waste, and as well as ocean that fosters our fish. And by 2000, we had about 2.5 or about 2 global hectares per person. And now we have about well, less than 2, 1.6 or something. And so with increasing population, this will go down. And by 2050, then we will have about 1.5 global hectares per person. So tackling population rise needs to be on the agenda as well. We have surpassed the planetary boundaries, which were defined by Johan Rockström at the Stockholm Resilience Center with another 30 scientists from around the world. In particular, the boundaries of climate change. We have too much CO2 in the atmosphere, as you know. We have too much cycling of nitrogen and phosphorus going into the oceans, creating dead zones in coastal waters around the globe. There are over 400 of these now, and we have massive biodiversity loss, about 200 species a day. So this is a crisis. This diagram has been updated, but with some slight changes, but I don't have time to go into that. It doesn't matter where we look, whether it's at population, GDP, which is the gross domestic product. This is how we measure our economies. Dammed rivers, water use, urban population, telephones, tourism, McDonald's restaurants. All the curves look the same. They are these hockey stick curves that Al Gore talked about when we have exponential growth. And this is from 1750 to 2000. And in the same time, we have had exponential decrease in the natural world. And our resources are being consumed according to these exponential curves. You can see here the actual production of molybdenum, for example. And because we live on unlimited Earth, we will hit the peak production at some point and then start going down the curve at the other end. We have hit already the peak of gold. Phosphate is probably not yet there, but we'll get there soon. And therefore, an energy peak is about now. The renewable energy we can make will never replace the fossil fuels. But we cannot have exponential growth forever. These are logarithmic curves of production of these different commodities. And you know that the logarithm of an exponential curve is a straight line. And so if people think that this can continue forever, then they do not understand that we live on a limited planet. And in doing that, we have created huge holes in the ground to dig up our resources. And we have exponential increase in CO2 emissions, as you can see here on the left diagram, and in temperature. So these curves are still increasing. There will be a dip in emissions this year because of COVID, and hopefully we can learn something from that, what we need to do to help dip the emissions, because the IPCC report on 1.5 degrees basically tells us we have to decrease the emissions by 50% by 2030. That's only 10 years from now. And Greta Thunberg and the young people and children demanding action demand halving by 2025. So that's only 5 years from now. And in doing this, life on land has been reduced dramatically, as well as in the ocean, and soil is being severely degraded. And there is a talk about only 60 more harvests if we do not change our agricultural practices. So there have been declarations of climate emergency. There are about 1,800 jurisdictions in 31 countries, which represent about 820 million people that have declared climate emergencies, as well as governments, organizations, universities, NGOs, faith groups, etc. But it's not enough to declare climate emergency. We need to have an action plan. And so the Club of Rome, of which I am a member, which has been in action for over 50 years, and they commissioned the Limit to Growth reports in 1972, and revisiting that report, we can see that we have gone along in the world according to the business as usual scenario, but the other scenarios they recommended that policy would tackle have received less attention, and we could have started curbing the crisis that we are actually seeing now. This is what they predicted. We would start seeing environmental degradation and effects on the economy in the beginning of this century. So the Club of Rome has in the climate emergency plan and the planetary emergency plan suggested some action points that we can take. So we basically haven't learned to live on this planet of ours. We only have one. You see the thin blue line around the globe. This is the atmosphere, which we are heating up when the energy from the sun is being returned into the atmosphere and then trapped with the CO2 in the atmosphere, as well as the water vapor. And this is what is, so we're basically using the atmosphere as our rubbish bin as we burn fossil fuels. We have to learn to live on this one planet. And so the ecological economics community has drawn up these circles you see on the left here, that we have nature, that is the ceiling. Within that, we can have our society. And then within that, we can have our economy. So it's the economy with the focus of economic growth, the neoliberal market paradigm, which is producing a society today where we have a lot of perplexed people. There is a consumption demand. Everything has to be new. People are depressed and don't know what to do. Everything has to be new, etc., etc. And in all this extraction and production and consumption is basically ruining the natural world, changing the climate. So we have all these fires around the world. We have floods and all sorts of disasters, plus the agricultural systems are ruining our soil. This is what the focus on growth is doing to our natural world and to our societies. We need to find a path to change this. So the human population has doubled in the last 50 years. And at the same time, the global economy has grown nearly fourfold, and the global trade has grown tenfold. Well, this shows that our consumption has increased, and trade has gone from being local to global. And this has driven up energy and material use exponentially, as we saw before. And yet we live in a culture where our politicians here being interviewed on television, they're unhappy when there is a dip in the economic growth curve. And they say that we need to increase our consumption. So we have generated this society of disconnected, unhappy people with children having far too much stuff and no connection with their families. And we basically throw everything out within a few months of buying it. This sort of lifestyle really needs to change. And even Greta is now talking about the fairy tales of eternal economic growth. And so the young people have realized that this cannot continue. So we need to envision what sort of world we want. We now live in a world where the market forces govern. We focus on GDP growth, and there is a lot of individualism. This is what is destroying the natural world. At the same time as we grow out lonely, gadget-filled cities. We can put a plaster on this by focusing on GDP growth, but a little bit more on community. So we generate a little bit of our food in the cities and get some renewable energy. But that is not enough. We can generate a fortress world by still focusing on individualism, but on well-being of some. We have some of that in the world already, where some are rich and doing well and others are poor outside of the gates. There are gated communities around the world. But this is really what we need here, where we focus on well-being and community. And this is the great transition that we need to go through. We need a paradigm shift in our thinking and in our living. So we need to set a vision to restore the world, to regenerate the natural world, where we stabilize the economy and put all the resources and materials we use into a circular system, and we share things and we are nice to each other, and we grow our own food, and we can repair our gadgets. We have renewable energy. We have happier people that work together, and at the same time, we can regenerate the natural world. This is the vision we need to set ourselves. Now, we have some stepping stones. We have the Sustainable Development Goals that were set in 2015. And now 5 years in, actually, Rosling's son, I can't remember his name now, he has recently shown where we are after 5 years, and we have reached some but gone backwards on others. So we really need to step up our actions here. We have the circular economy strategy of the European Commission here demonstrated in a diagram from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where we basically learn from the natural world, from the biological cycles to reproduce that for our industrial economy, where we learn to maintain and reuse and repurpose, and then at the last resort we recycle. Then we need to take less of the natural resources from nature or from our mountains, if you like. We have the sustainable well-being economy set forth by Robert Costanza et al. He, with a bunch of other people, including myself, were in Bhutan in 2013, setting up the framework for this sort of an economy where we actually look at our capital assets. We remember we have planetary boundaries, and we, through sustainable development, have the overall goal of a sustainable, prosperous, and equitable well-being for humans and the rest of nature. And in doing that, we need to actually focus on other things than GDP growth. Other people have come up with some interesting plans, like Kate Raworth. This is actually a framework for the economy, which has the biggest tracking from the public and regional governments. So she used the planetary boundary models to put the ecological ceiling, and then the social foundations we need to be within that. Or we need to provide it within the environmental ceiling, and this is the safe and just space for humanity, where we provide water and income and education and jobs, etc., within the environmental ceiling. And she has linked this here to the Sustainable Development Goals. Amsterdam has now used this model for visioning the future development of the city. I understand there are over 100 municipal authorities now interested in doing the same. And Costa Rica as a country is also working on this. So Kate Raworth is now very busy demonstrating how this can be done. We can also focus on a not-for-profit economy. This is a diagram from a paper by Jennifer Hinton, who is a PhD student in a Marie Curie PhD program that I coordinated, where all the profit goes towards environmental restoration and societal build-up. And this is a brilliant model showing that we actually can learn a lot from using systems analysis for socio-ecological systems. And then also, what has been promoted is the regenerative economy. And this is what I want to focus on a little bit here. This comes from John Fullerton in the Capital Institute, where he basically promotes, says that we need to go from conventional to regenerative, and using less instead of more. So at the moment, in the conventional economy, that's the neoliberal economy, we have a mechanistic sign, we have reductionist thinking, and everything is in parts. Some people are starting to think towards green, but that is just using a little bit less, but not restructuring the economy straight away, but going towards a little bit of renewable energy and so on. Sustainable is also not enough, according to him. what we need to go to is towards restorative, because we need to restore our ecosystems and restore our social systems that have been degraded, and then come to the regenerative economy, which regenerates nature and society and is built on natural system designs where we recognize patterns and we use holistic thinking. This economic model is based on an ecological framework, and I think so far this is the best framework I have seen that we should pay further attention to. And this has been adopted in some ways here by in a recent paper by Palahe et al. With many people, including myself. There are about 30 people involved. This is the socio-ecological system put together in a circular bioeconomy for well-being of people and nature. And you can see here through system analysis, we can link society with nature and renewable energy, and with this comes a 10-point action plan with focus on sustainable well-being, invest in nature, generate an equitable distribution. Sorry about that. Rethink land, food, and healthy systems holistically, create an enabling regulatory work, deliver mission-oriented innovation to the investment and political agendas, transform industrial sectors, reimagine cities, enable access to finance, enhance risk-taking capacity, and intensify and broaden research and education. So it's not like ideas and frameworks are missing. It's the political will that is missing. Even Robert Kennedy said in 1968, a country's gross domestic product measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. So stopping the focus on GDP is essential. So what else could we then measure in going to this new economy? You know, we can actually test this is the global GDP growth since the 1950s. You can see it has gone up steadily. But at the same time, if we take into account all the factors affecting the economy, the environment, and socially, if we add to it what is good, but take away what is bad, then we see this purple curve here, which is the genuine progress indicator. And you can see that by sort of 1970s, we started to level off and then gone down. And this is because we have been destroying the natural world. So to think that GDP growth is a good progress factor is very misleading. So you could say that up until the sort of late 1970s, we had economic growth, but we have had an uneconomic growth since. And this is why we have hit these crises. There are now nations around the world, Sweden also, that have chosen some well-being indicators. And here we have Sweden compared to the rest of the world. Actually, Sweden compares to the other OECD countries. And you can see here what is being looked at: household income, job security, rooms per person, air quality, education and skills, personal security, etc. So there are other issues we can focus on in our society than just growth. And this is now being done more and more. These are the indicators of well-being in the Netherlands, and other countries have done so as well. But most people do not actually know about that. These indicators have been set. So this is something we need to remind our governments of. They have set these indicators, including Iceland. Are they actually following up on them? We now have a global organization called the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which unifies all this new economic thinking. There are over 150 organizations a member of this. And the purpose of this sort of economy is to deliver shared well-being on a healthy planet. And anybody, all of you can join this alliance. There are now 4 government leaders that have joined. That is Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, the Prime Minister of Iceland, Katrín Jakobsdóttir, and the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, and then just recently also Wales. And you can see a TED Talk by Nicola Sturgeon on why the well-being economy is so important. There are other issues we can focus on because we really need to turn things around very quickly. The economy is crucial. We don't turn it around in one day, but in one day we could set an ecocide law, that is, make ecocide a crime against humanity. And this can be done by promoting ecocide as a crime in the Rome Statute, which was set in 1996. And include the following crimes: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. That was added in 2010, and we could add ecocide, and it would be fantastic if Sweden would do